Well, a year ago, average draft position looked like this at wide receiver, at least in half PPR. DeAndre Hopkins, 6th overall. Davante Adams, 2 picks later. Julio Jones, 2 picks later. Then Michael Thomas and Odell Beckham. Those top 5 going in the first 13 picks. You had Tyreek Hill going just after that. Hopkins, Adams, Julio, Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham, and Tyreek Hill. It was a weird year for wide receivers. Wasn't nearly as good as 2018 was for wide receivers. And this year, familiar names, different order, but right now ADP on NFC is Michael Thomas, 5th overall. Then Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, and Julio Jones. And one more spot after that is Chris Godwin. We're going to talk about the top 6. Those 6, Michael Thomas, Adams, Hopkins, Hill, Julio, and Chris Godwin. Welcome to a wide receiver rankings edition of Fantasy Football Today. Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg, Heath Cummings, and Ben Gretsch. All right, Jamie, give me an overall assessment of these top 6 wide receivers, and what do you think about these guys compared to previous years where you had Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham in there and Juju Smith-Schuster last year? You know, you had kind of the same names over and over again. What do you think about the group this year, which is maybe a little bit different than what we've seen in the past?
They're obviously awesome. I think they're all going to be, you know, if they stay healthy, have the chance to, you know, continue to produce at a high level. Clearly, there's some challenges. You know, is Calvin Ridley going to eat into Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst as well? Is DeAndre Hopkins going to thrive in Arizona, you know, leaving Deshaun Watson and the situation he's been used to? Is Chris Godwin going to be successful with Tom Brady? But, you know, from what we've seen from them, either with a small sample size, you know, like Godwin, you know, having his breakout season last year, or what Julio Jones has done over the course of his career. I mean, these guys are awesome. The one concern I think would be is that if you draft them early, are you leaving running back talent on the board and missing out on still very good wide receiver talent in that round 3-4 range? And I think that's the draft challenge that people have to sort of, you know, deal with is, you know, are you going to go running back heavy with your first 2 picks and then still get good wide receiver talent later while passing up, you know, clearly, you know, 2 of these guys or maybe 1 of these guys?
Heath, you've got Davante Adams 2 and Julio Jones 3. They're both coming off of down years by their standards. Why are they 2 and 3?
Yeah, I mean, down years by their standards, sure. But Hopkins had an injury that cost him 4 games, or not, Adams had an injury that cost him 4 games. You look at his 16-game pace over the last 2 seasons, it's 115 catches, 1,400 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He had some weird, bad touchdown luck last year. He's normally been one of those guys that we're saying, well, he's not going to score quite that many again, and he probably won't be like a 12, 13 guy, but I expect he's got as good a chance of anybody as scoring double-digit touchdowns. And both of these guys in situations where, sure, I mean, Jamie mentioned Calvin Ridley and Hayden Hurst. Well, last year, for the first half of the year, it was Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, and Austin Hooper. So I don't think Julio's got necessarily more competition than he had last year. Adams doesn't really have any more competition than he had last year. They're going to both go over 150 targets, and they're both still really good.
Hey, Ben.
Hey.
3rd episode of the week. Here's Ben Gretsch, ladies and gentlemen. Ben, here's what I find surprising based on our rankings, where Hopkins is 6th for Jamie, 5th for Dave, and 6th for Heath. Where do you have DeAndre Hopkins?
I have him 7th, but I have
updated and I have him 7th now as well. So
you've moved DJ Moore ahead of him?
Correct.
Okay.
I have Moore 5, and I have since January, so Heath's a copycat.
Well, what I find interesting is that the ADP I read, Michael Thomas, Davante Adams, Hopkins 3, then Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, and Chris Godwin. So are the CBS guys just down on DeAndre Hopkins, Ben?
Maybe, and I don't think it's wrong. I mean, so there's a things to consider, right? We know that, you know, I know he's talked a lot about with him how he's moving to a spread offense. It's going to be a little harder for him to dominate targets. We also know that Arizona's probably going to throw more. So maybe he can get close to his, you know, a similar target number as you kind of project it out. But I think there's, I don't know. Initially for me, it was concern about changing teams, the shortened off season, just the history of players changing teams. You know, a lack of certainty with Kyler Murray. We're all really excited, but he's a running quarterback too. And we don't know how much his passing ability will translate to an elite number 1 type receiver season, especially when I think Christian Kirk's a good player and Larry Fitzgerald's still going to be around. So I think there's a lot of elements there that are like, okay, what is his real upside? But then lately I said I've been coming around. It's just remembering that DeAndre Hopkins is really, really good. And this team is probably going to throw a ton.
DeAndre Hopkins has never been on a team that's thrown for more than like 4,100 yards, right around there. He's never been on a team that's thrown 30 touchdown passes, but he always gets the 30% or more target share. The only time in the last 5 years, the only times he didn't get 30% or more of the targets was the Osweiler year. The other 4 years, it's been at least 30%. It's hard to, that's a lot. It's hard to, I guess, project that. Was that fair to say? You're not going to just give somebody 30, maybe Adams, but not Hopkins.
If he got 30% of the targets last year from just what Kyler Murray did, he would have been the second most targeted receiver in the NFL, and it would have been the third most targets of his career at 166.
Do you think he'll get there?
No.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to do in a spread offense.
Right. All right, so we have a lot to talk about with all of these guys, and we're looking forward to it. We're also going to read your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. I do have one news item to get to. It's about a wide receiver. The last time we saw him in a full season, he was number 2 in non-PPR, number 5 in PPR. That was 2018, and that is Antonio Brown. NFL Network reporting that the Seahawks and the Raiders have had internal discussions about signing Antonio Brown. He only played one game in 2019. It was good. It was against the Dolphins.
Did you say the Raiders?
Am I wrong?
What's that? Fool me once, shame on me. Like what? The Raiders?
Did I get it wrong? Did I have the wrong team?
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's hilarious if you're right.
Ravens.
I mean, he
Ravens.
derailed their 2019
Ravens.
season.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's
Good
disappointing.
spot. Good
Would have been
spot.
more fun if it was the Raiders, but I'm glad
Could
we
you
got
imagine
Yeah,
if the Raiders brought him back?
Alarm bell should have gone off right there. I'm sorry about that. The Ravens, he's always working out with his cousin, Hollywood Brown, and Lamar Jackson. So I guess that makes sense. But how good do you guys think Antonio Brown could be if he's able to play this year?
Way better than where he's getting drafted.
Yeah.
Right. He'd be, I think, I'd probably rank him as a number 3 receiver right away, somewhere around 30.
Seattle's interesting because if he goes to Seattle, I don't even know the answer to this question. So I'm just
I was thinking
Jamie.
Baltimore. I was thinking Baltimore. Yeah.
Yeah, because he goes to Seattle. I don't know how you rank Brown, Lockett, and Metcalf.
It would crush those other 2 guys.
I was going to say this report is most notable for me because Seattle did bring in Josh Gordon late last year, and Gordon's applying for reinstatement, and Gordon's working out apparently in Seattle right now. And I don't know if they've had talks with him too. That hasn't, I don't think, been reported. But it seems like Seattle's kicking the tires on a potentially big wide receiver addition.
Well, big name.
Yeah, name.
Right. The report, according to the NFL Network, is whether it's Josh Gordon or Antonio Brown, there's a strong sense the Seahawks will eventually take a chance to upgrade at wide receiver. So it sounds like they're going to make a move.
Okay, but we saw the Antonio Brown thing the Josh Gordon thing last year, and it didn't really have an impact.
To me, these are 2 separate things.
Yeah, completely different.
Gordon, I wouldn't probably blink an eye in terms of Lockett and Metcalf, but Antonio Brown, I would.
Yeah. Okay, well, as I think we like the Seattle wide receivers quite a bit, so I don't want that to happen, although, hypothetical, Seahawks go out and sign Antonio Brown, Russell Wilson becomes QB blank.
4 still for me.
I'd probably put him ahead of Dak. I'd probably make him 3.
Yeah, it's either 3 or 4 with Dak. I just want to point out, Gordon was 9.1 yards per target last year, 10.4 the year before. He's still been very good. Seattle just used him situationally. And I do agree with Jamie. It's a different thing, but he came in mid-season. If they brought him back this year after he played with them last year, I think he could be kind of more of a threat to particularly Metcalf, for me, would be the concern.
And this one just popping up on Roto World. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin is comfortable with where Ben Roethlisberger is at in his rehab. Very nice. All right. Back to the wide receiver. That was a quick little detour. Back to the top 6 wide receivers. So
I heard the Raiders are looking at Ben Roethlisberger.
Man, the Raiders, jeez. Actually, let me promote a few things. I'm glad we're recording this Tuesday afternoon, so you'll hear this on Wednesday. So I had a lot of fun winning tonight, poker tonight on Twitch. That was great. But YouTube, we're on YouTube if you want to watch us. YouTube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. We also have the mailbag show on Friday. Send in your questions via Apple Podcast Review or email at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And baseball's back. I got my Jeter shirt on right now. Baseball's probably back. So, that's good.
The Raiders are starting baseball.
Oh, jeez. It's going to be, I'm never living this one down. Justin Jefferson and the Raiders. Let's check out the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast. Get ready for the season. Coming very, very quickly. And
what's the impact of fantasy
weird.
baseball? How's it going to work?
We're trying to think about, can you really do a head-to-head league? Do you have to, would you just do total points? Would you just do roto? Because there's going to be 8-ish weeks of games. 9. Maybe 10 till the end of the season.
I think you do a head-to-head with, and this is where my presence is missed. Do a head-to-head with double headers. You get to play everybody once, and then you start the playoffs. It's easy.
All right, but when do you start the playoffs?
You put the final 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah,
we don't have
That's
enough time
so
to be
short.
jacking around with it. These 3 weeks matter, and these 3 weeks don't matter. We've got 10 weeks. We're going to use them all.
Just play. Why don't you just play whoever scores the most points wins?
People like playing against each other.
Yeah, I know, but it's just different. It's weird. And
if you want to do that, you can play best ball.
I'm so much less enthusiastic this year, and it's such a shame. I love fantasy baseball. I can't really get into it right now. What am I supposed to start a fantasy baseball draft right now? It's almost July.
We've been in one for 3 months.
I know.
We have one draft that's still going, don't we?
Yes. It's great. Somebody's been on the clock for almost 2 weeks.
Well, somebody. I think we can probably guess who it is.
No, you'd be surprised. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's not Will Brinson. It usually is. All right. Anyway, Fantasy Baseball Today. Check out the podcast. Let's do some fill in the blank. The top 6 wide receiver with the most upside is blank.
Michael Thomas?
Are we including Michael Thomas like we?
Yeah, but Michael Thomas was
McCaffrey.
Oh, look. Yes, we are including Michael Thomas, but I think it's fair to note that DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones, they've had better years than what they've been close. They've all had huge years, like what Michael Thomas did last year. So I think it's a fair question either way.
Davante Adams.
In PPR, I think it's pretty clearly Michael Thomas, but there's others you could argue for Adams or Tyreek. I think in none.
For me, it's very clearly Tyreek Hill if Michael Thomas is not being considered. Clearly,
even in PPR.
Yeah, in all formats. I mean that offense. I mean, I think he said Adams had the best chance to score double-digit touchdowns. Tyreek scored 13 2 years ago when he was healthy. He scored 7 last year in 12 games, but 2 of those 12 games, he didn't even play 20% of the snaps. He left week 1 very early, and he left that game in Mexico City against the Chargers after, I think, 18% of the snaps. The game he returned after his collarbone, he only played 50-ish% of the snaps, and he scored 7 touchdowns in about 10 games. And then he scored 2 in 3 playoff games. He scored twice in the AFC Championship. I think he has monster touchdown upside with Patrick Mahomes, and he has monster yardage upside that Davante Adams doesn't. I think Adams is more of a high target kind of guy.
Adam, can we correct something else you were wrong about?
Sure.
DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones have not had seasons just as good as Michael Thomas.
What were their best seasons?
I can pull that up.
So what did Thomas score last year? I have Julio over here. What did Thomas score last year?
374.
Julio's best year was 369.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. So score one for Azer.
And Hopkins was 330 something.
Hopkins' best year was 334.
Okay. So Julio's been up there. All right, we'll split. I'll split 50%. But I got the Raiders thing wrong, so I'm batting 333, which is great.
Michael Thomas.
That would be 250 actually. If you were half on one and 0 on the other.
No, I'm 1 for 3.
No.
Okay.
Half for 2.
Tyreek Hill also, keep in mind, when he left the game against the Chargers, as Ben just said, very early in that game, he was pretty bad after that. He was just not himself. That was week 11. Week 12 was a bye. After that, the last 5 games of the season, he didn't have more than, I think, 72 yards. He was not Tyreek Hill. And still ended up with a good season.
Does he lose a little bit if Hardman takes on a bigger role and Watkins is healthy?
I don't think so.
I'm with you. I'm just, it's a potential, if
Edwards-Helaire
is as good as advertised catching the ball at backfield and Hardman takes on whatever bigger role to whatever extent, if he does, and Watkins is still, playing whatever percentage of snaps he's going to play, then I wonder if, Tyreek takes a slight dip in production.
Yeah.
Certainly a reasonable take, I think.
There have only been 2 wide receivers in the last 5 seasons who have finished top 5 in PPR with less than 90 catches. Tyreek Hill in 2018 and Chris Godwin in 2019. Godwin, though, played 14 games. He would have had more than 90 catches. But keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, if you're playing in a non-PPR league, Tyreek Hill's 2018 season, he actually scored more fantasy points than Michael Thomas did in 2019 in non-PPR. So his 2018 season was really outstanding in non-PPR. All right, back to fill in the blank. Which top 6 wide receiver has the most downside?
Hopkins.
It's Hopkins or Godwin. I think people are too excited on Godwin.
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Hopkins or Godwin.
I mean, to be fair, it's probably Thomas. It's just because he's being drafted as a top 5 overall player, and it's unrealistic that he's going to do what he did last year because Emmanuel Sanders will cut into whatever production he has, and Kamara should be 100%. So, if you're getting 2018 Michael Thomas, that's not bad, but it's not top 5 overall player.
So this is what really changed things for me with Thomas. It's like he had 185 targets last year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Most since 2015 for any wide receiver. But the 2 years before that, he was right around 150. So, and he didn't really like his rates were pretty similar. So it was basically just an increase in targets. And then Michael Thomas was the number 6 PPR receiver both 2017 and 2018. So I kind of felt like if his targets come back down to 150, he's going to be disappointing. But 2018 Michael Thomas, even though he was number 6 in PPR, those fantasy points would have been good enough to be number 1 in 2016, in 2017, and number 2 in 2019 behind only Michael Thomas. Like, he has had 2 amazing years in a row.
His 2018, I just looked it up in PPR, was good enough to outscore every running back except for Christian McCaffrey in that format last year. What he did in 2018 would have been the number 2 running back in 2019.
And 2018 was just a ridiculous year for wide receivers. So Michael Thomas still, if he gets 150 targets, has a good chance to finish as the number 1 wide receiver in PPR. But he still hasn't had double-digit touchdowns.
And his floor is massive. That's the other side of it. We just learned that even if Breeze goes down, he has a lot to do with that success. And Bridgewater's not there anymore, but I think he'd be fine with Jameis.
What if it's Taysom Hill though?
That would be a different scenario.
The top 6 wide receiver I won't draft is blank.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I don't have one that I wouldn't draft.
Okay.
But Hopkins is going 3rd amongst receivers, so you're not going to draft him.
I probably am least likely to draft him, yes.
Top 6 wide receiver with the highest floor is blank.
Michael Thomas.
Easily Thomas.
I would say in non-PPR, it's not Michael Thomas.
Sure. But
that fair?
PPR is a dominant format.
What do you guys think, though? I think it's Tyreek Hill in non-PPR.
I'll take Adams.
Also take Thomas.
Heath, you look like you want to insult me. You have this look on your face like you're about to drop the boom.
Well, no, I always want to insult you. No, I was trying to decide. I was really stumped by a non-PPR. I think I'd probably lean Hill.
Okay. The catches are so different. Like, he's like an 86 catch guy, and Michael Thomas had 150 last year. It's just what a freaking season he had. Unbelievable. All right. So how far ahead of the pack is Michael Thomas from the rest? And let's compare it to the running backs. Who's more ahead of the rest of the position, Christian McCaffrey or Michael Thomas? The rest of the elites. Thomas, Jamie?
In PPR, yeah.
I actually am going to say McCaffrey because of Jamie's argument that he just made about all the guys that were hurt and Thomas maybe coming back to 150 targets. I don't think there's a big, pretty huge difference for both, but I'll say McCaffrey.
Yeah, I have McCaffrey a lot further ahead of Saquon Barkley than I do Thomas ahead of Adams. So I'll say McCaffrey stands out more.
Are you nervous about Julio Jones at this stage in his career with, some decline in the stats last year?
There's 600 pass attempts, like minimum, to go around in Atlanta. And it's basically Julio, Calvin Ridley, and Hayden Hurst. No disrespect to Russell Gage.
Why not any disrespect to Russell Gage?
I don't see, unless Julio gets hurt, but I don't see a non-injury case for him getting fewer than 150 targets. He's going to be a 1,400-yard guy.
Okay. Does this matter to you? Tom Brady. So Chris Godwin last year had 1,339 yards and 9 touchdowns. In the last 10 seasons with the Patriots, only one wide receiver I guess twice. Wes Welker was the only wide receiver with 1,200 yards. He did it twice. Only one wide receiver, I think, had more than 8 touchdowns. That was only one time. So basically what Chris Godwin did last year, no wide receiver did with Tom Brady in the last decade in New England. Does that matter to you?
I don't care what happened with him in New England, to be honest, because Bruce Arians is a different animal than what he's had before. These receivers are different than what he's had before, aside from that, 2007, 2008 campaign. And, I just think these guys are going to be fine.
I think they're going to be fine too. I think the gap between Godwin and Evans, I have a hard time with it. I don't agree with it. I think there's a lot of, Dave has some good numbers on this that he's pulled where Brady's best players have typically not been outside receivers except for that one Moss season.
It's so irrelevant though.
Yeah, my issue with that is I don't know that Godwin is very similar to the other slot receivers that he's had in the sense that it's essentially just Welker and Edelman, right? And they're both option route guys. They're both short area agility, quickness guys. Godwin is he can be that. I'm not saying he can't, but he's a different type of slot receiver. He's a more vertical slot receiver. He made a lot of plays down the field last year, and I don't know that he's going to be running a whole lot of like option routes and those types of things.
And this is just my perception. It could be wrong. I feel like Chris Godwin is a more complete wide receiver already than Mike Evans is. Mike Evans is kind of like he's really, really good at his 2 tricks, but he's kind of a 2-trick pony. And I think Chris Godwin can do more. And I'm worried that if he doesn't get those deep shots, he doesn't do very much after the catch. If he doesn't get as many of those deep shots, I feel like the floor is a lot lower for Evans.
He's going to have such better quarterback play though. Both these guys. I mean, they were successful last year based on a lot of it, them and what Arians did for them and Leftwich did for them. I just think they're going to have a much better, quarterback situation based on how Tom Brady's going to play, even at his age.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. But the other concern I would just add with Godwin, and again, it's the gap that I'm talking about. And Heath makes a decent point about the floor, but is Gronkowski, and they're going to run more 2 tight end sets. And so if OJ Howard is still involved to some degree, those are short area targets and intermediate targets. They're all in Godwin's range. Evans still seems like the clear downfield threat when Brady does throw downfield. And I think he will throw a lot more downfield in Tampa than he did in New England. I agree with Jamie. It's going to be completely different. And you can go back into Brady's history. The 1 year he played with Brandon Cooks, his average depth of target or his average depth of throw was a full yard higher than any other season he's had since 2013. He was a way more vertical passer when he had a legitimate vertical threat. And he will be in Tampa Bay in an offense that's going to have more vertical routes. I think Evans kind of has less competition for the types of routes he's going to run and the depths that he's going to see targets than Godwin does.
The thing about Evans, I think, which is great, I know we're getting away from the topic here, but his value is just ridiculous. Like, he may struggle a little bit, but if he's anywhere close to what his averages are, and you're getting him in round 3, and in some cases mid to end of round 3, that's a steal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's
I actually have him Godwin 6, Evans 8. So I think the gap should be closer, but I think Evans should be top 10.
That's exactly what ADP is, by the way. Godwin 6, Evans 8, but separated by 8 picks. And just another thing to keep in mind, Chris Godwin, for his career, averages 15.1 yards per catch. Julian Edelman and Wes Welker average 11 yards per catch in their career. Godwin is a beast. He's a different animal.
Players.
Yeah, but just, play the slot, play similar roles, but different players. One more thing to keep in mind, Tampa Bay threw the ball a little bit less later in the year. Their offense last 6 games of the year their defense got better. They threw less. They also faced some crappy offenses. But there's just a lot. There's a lot. So you know what? I'm going to open the floor to you guys. I'm going to let you talk it out. I'm going to let you rank the top 6. Number 1, I know, is Michael Thomas. I'm going to let you rank the next 5. And you guys can debate the rankings and whatnot, and we'll hear from our analysts. We'll do that after this quick break here on Fantasy Football Today. We're coming right back. So I think the best thing to do here is give me your rankings 1 through 6. I guess we'll go PPR here. Jamie, kick it off.
I'm going to go with Michael Thomas of the Raiders, 1. Davante Adams, 2. Julio Jones, 3. Tyreek Hill, 4. And Chris Godwin, 5.
And Hopkins, 6?
Hopkins, 6.
Okay. Heath?
Same top 5 as Jamie and DJ Moore, 6.
Ben?
And I go Thomas, Hill, Adams, Jones. And then the big question that I had most of January and February, and something I'd like to discuss a little, is DJ Moore versus Chris Godwin straight up. And because I've fallen very firmly into DJ Moore should go ahead of Chris Godwin. And I don't understand why he doesn't. I have Moore 5, Godwin 6, Hopkins 7.
Well, why he doesn't is because Godwin's already had the top 5 season and DJ Moore hasn't. Like what Godwin did last year in 14 games, and I know DJ Moore only played 14 and a quarter as well. But Godwin was just a lot better.
But it was all efficiency. I mean, we talk a lot about efficiency regression, right? He had 11 yards per target last year. He had 9 touchdowns, a massive touchdown rate. That stuff is going to regress. He only had 120 targets. He was pacing for a lot more, but Moore had a lot more volume in the same number of games, as Heath just said. And he was a year younger. He was playing with a worse quarterback. I know, Winston wasn't great, but Kyle Allen was pretty bad last year across the board in pretty much any metric. They went and traded him this offseason to go be a third stringer. And Moore was very, very good on the volume that he did get compared to guys like Curtis Samuel, who was massively inefficient on the volume that he got in that offense. And Moore has the longer track record as a prospect coming in. I think Godwin's very, very good. Like I said, I have him ranked 6, and he's one of my favorite young players to take. I think we did a dynasty startup mock not too long ago. I took Moore and Godwin back to back at the 1-2 turn, but I would take Moore ahead of Godwin in that format too. And Godwin goes higher. I don't understand how Moore, with a better prospect profile, better track record, younger, worse QB, more volume last year, and was still productive, is going behind a guy who was mostly just all efficiency last year.
I think probably 2 things would be, 1, quarterback play still probably worse, going in.
Yep.
I think most people take Brady over Bridgewater. No offense, Teddy. And for me, it's offense. I think that Bruce Arians and what he does and what he still will do versus what Joe Brady hopefully will do. And I have them 2 spots apart. This isn't a knock against DJ Moore, because I certainly understand where you're coming from. But I just think, Chris Godwin's touchdown potential also. What you should be able to get from him until DJ Moore does that, like get over the 4 has been his career high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get to 6+, maybe get to close to 10. I just feel more comfortable with Godwin right now. I would not be surprised by any stretch if what you're saying happens, that Moore is better. I will say this though, Adam, because you brought this up, that we are probably, especially based on ADP, we're down on Hopkins. We are higher on DJ Moore probably than anybody else. And that's not even showing Ben's rankings on our rankings. Right. Dave's a little bit down on Moore by comparison. Heath and I have him. Heath, you said you moved him up to 6. I'm just looking at our rankings right now.
Yeah.
So he's 6 for you. He's 7 for me. Dave has him 9. I've been trying to do my due diligence. I know Adam knows this, but I've been trying to listen to some other podcasts, and people are excited about DJ Moore in round 3. We take him in round 2, I did a draft for another magazine last week. I got DJ Moore early round 3. Shocked that he was still there. Paired him with Godwin, similar to what you did, Ben, but it was with Saquon Barkley. So I went Barkley, Godwin, DJ Moore, and I was like, just send me the trophy now, because just getting those 3 players to start, I was ecstatic about it. But we're I think a little bit higher on DJ Moore, and you can make a case that he's a top 5 guy, and that goes back to what I was saying at the start of the show, that you can wait on receiver a little bit and pass this top 6. Allen Robinson's going to be good. Hopefully Juju bounces back. You got Galladay and Calvin Ridley that are going to have, potentially monster seasons. It's Cooper Kupp. It's such a fun position this year that you don't have to take one of these guys early. It's just, hopefully we get 2018 where all these guys are monsters. But, I think there's going to be a lot of good wide receivers and a lot of good wide receiver play.
Well, let me bring this up about Godwin, though, because Moore had 135 targets in basically 14 games. He played 15 technically, but basically 14 games. I don't know if he had a target in that game he left, but
he had 2 targets, caught a pass. He played 6 snaps.
Okay, 133 targets then in 14 games. Godwin was on pace for 137 or 138. I think 137 targets in 16 games. That's really not a lot of targets for a guy that you want to finish top 5 overall. I mean, it would be, I guess, for Tyreek Hill, like, because his yards per catch.
It'd be 12 less than what Thomas gave you in 2018.
But Godwin is up there in yards per catch too. I mean, he's actually very comparable to Tyreek Hill, which is crazy. But it's not a ton of targets, and the Bucs had the 4th most pass attempts in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
So
they added Gronk.
Now the tight ends did combine for over 100 targets. I think like 110.
Where did the Panthers rank last year in terms of pass attempts?
They were first, but I'm more confident that they're going to have to throw a ton, and their new offense is going to be a pass-heavy offense than I am. I think the Bucs will be better. And why wouldn't you run more? Why wouldn't you protect Tom Brady a little bit?
They were second. The Falcons were first by 51 pass attempts.
I would say there's a better chance of Moore having more targets than Godwin.
Well, it's really more like the Godwin thing is like, does that target volume concern you? Is that a
But I think the other
problem?
thing with Moore is, we keep saying they added Godwin. The Panthers added Robbie Anderson. It's not like he's not going to be involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and did you hear Curtis Samuel's going to have a big year?
Yeah, and Samuel's a concern too. And Jamie made a good point about the touchdowns. As he said that, I realized, I'm probably more optimistic about Moore's touchdown potential than others. He's right though. He's only scored 6 touchdowns on 142 career receptions. That's not very good. I will say that he had 146 receptions in his college career and he scored 17 TDs. So he was good at it in college.
This is regression coming in a hopefully big way. I just don't know if he's going to be like Godwin feels like he could be 10 plus touchdowns. I don't know if Moore can do that. He can have a season like that, but I just don't know if he will. And so that's what separates it for me a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And I think I'm just a little bit more optimistic about it, but it's fair to not be.
And Heath, you're right there. You have him back to back.
Yeah. The important thing is like he's going to score more touchdowns this year. We'll find out this year if it's like his best season, if he's Keenan Allen or T.Y. Hilton, where like 6 or 7 is the good touchdown season you get from DJ Moore, or if he actually has that top 5 upside.
Yep.
Okay, next topic then. Tyreek Hill, 2nd for Ben and 4th, I believe, for Jamie and Heath. Discuss. So that's Tyreek Hill ahead of Julio Jones and Davante Adams.
This is, for me, it's a format thing. Non-PPR, I would take Hill over Jones. But in PPR, I just think Jones, what he should be able to do reception-wise, puts him ahead of Tyreek for me.
He was the best wide receiver in non-PPR in 2018. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And in PPR scoring, like in what was about as good as it gets for him, finished number 3. So like, I don't know that I have a hard time, and it was a very good season for wide receivers. I have a hard time picturing him being better than that year, especially like we talked about, could Mecole Hardman improve a little and take a couple targets away? I worry a little bit about with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and the way they've used Damian Williams, having both those guys on the field in the red zone, that so many of their touchdowns seem to come from inside the 10 with guys running these jet sweeps or these trickster type plays. And those Tyreek Hill scores on a lot of those. Those are the perfect types of plays also where Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be used as well. So I think there's a little bit of a competition concern, but I mean, we're arguing 2 versus 4.
We have to. These are important decisions, I mean,
Well, it's, the best wide receiver for the best quarterback, and no disrespect to Travis Kelce, different position, but this is, this is his guy. This is the guy you want to have if you love the Chiefs, and everybody should love the Chiefs from a fantasy perspective. So, it's worth taking him, and if you like him too, you take him too. You can't really argue, I think, taking any of these guys over, I think, anyone but Thomas.
I think with Hill, one of the deciding things for me, and it's not really a knock on Jones or Adams, but the offense that even, they led a lot and they still threw a ton in situation neutral situations. They threw even in one score games in the first half and way more than any other team. They're going to be pass heavy, even if they win a lot of games. They're basically not influenced by the fact that they lead teams. They still throw, and he's tied to the best quarterback in the NFL. And again, that's no disrespect to Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers, but those guys aren't on that level. Just frank. I mean, I think Julio has tons of upside because Atlanta will, I think, throw a ton as well. I'm concerned about, yes, Adams should have 30% of the targets, but Green Bay falling even lower in pass attempts to like a really low number if they're, very successful offensively. And that would, I think, cap Adams' potential. He'd still be probably a top 5 receiver, where I have him ranked. I have him third. I agree with these guys that he's very good, but I think it would cap his ceiling a little bit. I think Tyreek's ceiling is essentially unlimited. He's always been productive. Heath mentioned 2018 how good he was. He was good last year when healthy. Very good. He was good in the playoffs when healthy.
What's his catch ceiling though? Because you say it's unlimited. That's I think the issue because he can be 1,500 yards. He can be 15 touchdowns. I don't think that's
15
not
touchdowns.
that unrealistic.
It's probably only 90 catches. Yeah, I agree. Like his ceiling, when I say his ceiling is unlimited, I mean like he has the potential to like shatter records for long touchdowns in 1 year, like kind of like a Randy Moss type player, right? Like remember when Randy Moss used to have these monster seasons because he would catch so many long touchdowns together. With him and Mahomes and in this offense, Tyreek has the potential to have like 8 or 10 long touchdowns in a season, which is crazy to even talk about. But that would give him a massive yardage ceiling. He wouldn't be a 100-catch guy.
Tyreek Hill in his last 3 seasons. Let's see if I have this handy stat here. I do. Yes, I do. He scored 26 receiving touchdowns. 14 of them have been from 40 or more yards out. Fun stuff.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he's.
You know what team he plays twice a year?
The Raiders.
The Raiders.
Yeah.
Oh, the Raiders.
They're going to sign Tyreek Hill, by the way, the Raiders, just in case you hadn't heard. All right. Anything else, guys? Anything else you wanna fight about? You know, I think what Ben says about Adams is interesting and how run heavy they could be, the Packers. If they are bottom 5 in pass attempts, that's a bad sign for Davante Adams. You don't get elite wide receivers.
I don't think they're going to be
teams.
as good though running the ball.
And like even if they throw 500 passes, which there's probably get them close to bottom 5, and it would be quite a bit lower than last year from what I recall. Like he's still a 150 target guy.
Yeah, he's the best bet for 30% targets. Even better bet than Michael Thomas probably.
Yep, makes sense.
Hey, Adam.
Everyone else. Yes. What did I
What's
do
your
now?
top 5 receivers?
What's the format?
Half PPR.
Half PPR. Michael Thomas, Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones, and a whole bunch of running backs. Because I don't really feel super comfortable taking anyone else.
What happened to Adam Thielen's top 5 receiver?
Yeah.
Not happening.
That was one of your big takes.
First it was
Why is it
Amari
not happening?
Cooper. No, did I have him
Jefferson.
top? Did I really think Thielen was gonna be top 5? Definitely.
You said
top
he could be
10.
number 2, actually.
I did. No,
I thought you said 3.
And
I
I
thought you said
believe
3.
that. I believe that with Thielen. Like if they have to throw the ball a lot,
Now you believe it?
No, I'm worried about how much they're gonna throw the ball.
Did I really say that? Here, let me defend it.
Number 5 for me, I guess, would be Chris Godwin. It's really good. Yeah. It's running backs. So thank you for asking, JB. Let's read some emails. Fantasyfootball at cbsi.com. It's from Michael. Hey, JD, Turk, Elliot, and Carla. Scrubs. With Zeke's damaged off, I don't really know if I agree with the premise of this question, but with Ezekiel Elliott's damaged offensive line, does that substantially help his PPR potential and unfortunately downgrade Dak's wide receivers?
No.
What's
All
the
of
damage
that.
besides Frederick leaving?
Right. All of that is a no. Their offensive line is still well above average. It's not damaged. It's not bad. It's just not leaps and bounds better than every other offensive line like it had been at times in Zeke's career earlier. Yeah. And there's no way that Zeke's going to suddenly cut into the receiver's target share. You're going the wrong way on that.
Okay. From Dozier, I was auto-drafted the following team in a PPR league. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones and Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey and Miles Sanders. This is pretty good. Tyler Higbee, Robert Woods at flex. And he also has the Chargers DST, not the Rams. But anyway, the question was, he has Cam Akers on his bench as well. He's got a lot of Rams. The free agent pool is thin at wide receiver, so I'm trying to trade either Woods or Kupp for a wide receiver 2-level player to relieve my concentration of Rams. I'd love to trade and get, let's keeps going here. But are you concerned about all the Rams he has? He has Kupp, he has Woods, he has Higbee, and he has Akers on his bench.
He has all the Rams except for golf.
Yeah, basically. Yep.
So he's trying to trade one of the receivers for another receiver?
Yeah.
I would sell Kupp because you'll get more in return for him based on what I think most what rankings will tell you. So I guess, what's the format?
PPR.
I mean, this may be something you could pull off for DJ Moore if somebody's looking at a different site.
I also you have enough really good players on this team. I'm not so worried about your 5th, 6th, and 7th best players or 5th, 6th, and 9th best players all playing for the Rams.
Yeah, and the Rams weren't really great offensively last year, and still, if you had Kupp and Woods, you did well.
They were an above average offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The concern would be is if Akers is bad. But
He's just a bench player. He's just a bench player for him, though.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to worry about it, you said, right. All right, Tony from Los Angeles. Hey, Corey, Sean, Eric, and George.
What do you mean to world?
Good job. Ben, you're on fire.
Wow.
I know you guys have talked about this a few times and have mostly said to go with the wide receivers available in the late first round, like Davante Adams, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, etc. But I just wanted to ask one more time, LOL, would I be crazy to pick up a player such as Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Nick Chubb, or even Josh Jacobs with a late first-round pick somewhere between 8 and 12 over those wide receivers in PPR? I'm just not crazy about picking a wide receiver in the first round besides Michael Thomas.
I'm getting to the point where if I pick at the back end of round 1, I want to go running back.
I guess my question, Jamie, is
I'd want one of those receivers.
When wouldn't you go running back then?
I'm almost at that point unless I get Thomas and Adam.
Heath, what did you say? I'm sorry.
I want one of those. If Adams is there, I'm not taking any of those running backs over him in PPR.
I'm in a 14-team draft right after this. We record this, which will be done when this is released, and we have the 8th pick, and so we won't pick again until 21st. And me and Chris Towers are doing that draft together. We're talking about taking Miles Sanders at 8 because in that format, we don't really feel comfortable getting another running back at 21 necessarily. And, if we have to take DJ Moore there, we'll take DJ Moore there. But we're probably going to start Sanders at 8. I think you can do it. Yeah, I mean, it just depends.
There is no chance that your team does not start with Miles Sanders, DJ Moore, and A.J. Brown. You realize that? It's definitely happening.
What could go wrong? I mean, what could
just nothing's gonna go wrong. No, it might not start with DJ Moore. I might try to get Moore in the 3rd. We'll see.
What I'd like to see the fight that would ensue. I don't know if Chris is still as passionate about David Johnson, but because running backs are going to go so heavy in that draft, if at 21 you're fighting DJ
21?
Moore versus David Johnson.
Oh God, that would be brutal because I could never live with taking David Johnson in the 2nd round.
What if he's there in the 4th round in this 14-team league?
Oh, for sure.
Johnson?
David Johnson will not be in the 4th round of.
I don't think he'll be there. I would consider him there. Yeah, I took Melvin in a 4th round recently.
Okay, good show, guys. Thank you very much. Tight end.
Jonathan Taylor will be there in the 4th round, though. That's the pick.
You guys know. You guys already know the whole draft plan, apparently.
Ooh, man.
Matthew Stafford, Mike Gesicki.
Let me see if I can guess the consensus top 5 at tight end. Kelsey Kittle. Waller.
Andrews,
Waller. Andrews, Ertz, Waller. That's my guess.
Heath and I both have Andrews over Ertz, I believe.
Yeah, Kelsey Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller. Am I right? It's Kelsey Kittle, Ertz, Andrews, Waller. Damn it! Oh, well.
Ertz is over Andrews in the consensus, even though the two of us have him over Ertz?
Dave must have Andrews 5th.
Oh, that's a good point. Let's see. Yeah. I'll tell you right now. Hold on.
Or the rankings are wrong? Is that what you're saying?
Ertz. No, he's got Andrews 4th. All
right, whatever. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about
the Raiders. It's not the Ravens.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Great show. Appreciate it, everybody. Leave us a nice Apple Podcast review. Send us your emails, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Tight ends on Thursday. Mailbag on Friday. Join watch our YouTube channel. Join our Facebook page. And for Heath, for Ben, for Jamie, I'm Adam. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you on Thursday.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.